everybody, welcome back inside the stash. So in this video series, we are going to be building the brand new Tamiya Nissan Z, the 2023 kit that was just released back here right before Christmas. I know a bunch of people have started these, several people have finished these, but in looking through a number of those videos, getting inspiration for colors and just looking at how the kit builds up from a viewership point of view, I noticed that no one has done an actual in-depth kit review of why this kit's cool. There's several really neat engineering features that Tamiya has put into this kit that make especially the painting of it substantially easier when you're doing the multicolored interior options, or painting the roof, or assembling all of the roof components. People have gone over the parts, but not really the cool part of it. So this will be an in-depth, in-box review before we get started on the project in this introduction video to the series. And, probably going to be like 45 minutes long like all the rest of ours are. So grab a beverage, maybe some snacks, say goodbye to your family. You might not see them for a couple of days kind of thing. And let's take a in-depth look at this brand new kit from Tamiya. And hope you enjoy it. Okay, guys, so as I've said in the past, and if you've watched any of the ones in the past, our kit reviews are not 8-minute segments where we just sort of casually throw the parts in front of the camera. We'll take an in-depth look at this. I got this new cutting mat. I don't need a cutting mat because this stuff right here is the same sort of material. But I got this cutting mat in a raffle at the Cleveland IPMS show. And so we're not going to use this side because it's all gridded out and it'll cause a problem. Also notice that this rulers are in 1/25th and 1/35th scale, and we've got how to align your propellers and things like that. And as you already saw, it's gonna make the camera go in and out of focus. Although I will say there is a 1/24 scale ruler over here, so I mean, at least they might vaguely consider you to build cars. Hummer being a paint company rather than a model company. But at any rate, we're gonna use the backside of this, which is just blank red. And the reason why we're doing this big long intro into this is because, let me know, this is a sincere feedback thing, because in my editing of this I won't really be able to tell how bad it looks to you guys on the end. So let me know as we go through this whether or not the blank red background is a suitable background for this type of thing. If you can see the parts okay, if you can see what we're doing okay, just some feedback, sincere feedback. Here's your opportunity to make a difference, right? Because I could always go get some, other color stuff. I had the little blue square that I used, but it was never quite big enough. This is a nice big surface that literally is almost all of the camera. It's gonna be, there we go, all the cameras. So anyway, we are, again, if you've forgotten, because we're sitting here blathering about colors, we're reviewing the new Tamiya Nissan Z, the 2023 Z34 version. Brand new kit from Tamiya. And it will be one of the 2 kits we're going to be building the first half of this year. So let's go ahead and get into it. So as typical with most new Tamiya kits these days, you get a plethora of paperwork. This is just a little bit about the car. There is an English version of it somewhere. Let me see. Yep. Top here is English. So if you want to go ahead and try to get this in focus for the entire thing, you want to pause that and read it, you can. But yeah, paper, we're not going to pay attention to that. Tech tips. Hey, how to build a model if you've never built a model before. At least there actually is a car section of the model, so yay. And don't forget to shake your booty. Then you have a little bit of read the instruction book and stuff like that. It's another little, even less colorful version of the same thing. And then we have our decals. This kit comes with the metal transfers, and then you have window masks, which we'll look at a little bit more in a second. And of course you have your instruction manual. This is a stapled booklet version rather than being a trifold accordion style. So again, we'll take a peek at that in the end. So the first thing you're going to get is a great big block of white parts. Let me grab my pointer. Sorry for the random sleeve in the shot there, but this is going to start you off basically in step 1, because step 1 of this vehicle is building out the chassis. So we have our chassis here. Let me zoom in here. Has some nice good detailing on it. Have your brake lines and whatnot engraved into the chassis as well. No engine in this. You do get a little bit of a transmission cover, which we'll show you here in a second as we get to it. But overall, nice detailing, good engraving all the way around, and not really a whole heck of a lot more to say about that when it comes down to it. You have your door panels, the inserts for your door panels. These things go in this section here behind. They are a separate color, so great to see those being a separate paint color. These are your strut towers. They go into these associated shaped holes. It's an interesting way to break the chassis down, considering the fact this doesn't have an engine or opening hood. To have these sort of be a separate piece is kind of, I don't know, a little bit of an oddity in that sense, but it is what it is. These little spears here are for your door cards. One goes in here, one goes in here, and they are in pretty much every option other than the completely, totally black interior, separate colors. So again, a nice little piece for Tamiya to do to split these out to make coloring them much easier. No masking off this and trying to paint weird angles and whatnot. You have some inserts for the lower fascia, the fuel tank filler. Well, I don't know why the filler door is separate on here. Could have just molded it in, but you know, it is what it is. You have your brake calipers on here as well. Let's go ahead and get into there. Have some nice detail on them, front and back. You have your tops of your dashboard for right and left-hand drive. This will be where your gauge binnacle goes in here, so this is sort of the sunshade that goes over top of it. And then coming down here, you have your seats, seat backs, or I should say the seats themselves. The backs are a separate piece, but they are not on this tree. Then you have the top of the seat insert and the bottom of the seat insert, basically the the lower seat, I guess would be the best way of putting it. You do have to pay attention to which way you're building it, left-hand drive or right-hand drive, because this is the driver-specific lower seat, and it would obviously switch seats depending on which way you're building the car. You then have your lower skirts for the body, the spears. These are the silver spears that run over the top of the windows and the door frame. And then you have the door locks themselves, which if we zoom in again, you'll see have keyholes, and they are keyed left-hand drive and right-hand drive, because remember, obviously your right-hand drive car, your entry door, your driver's door, is going to be on the other side of the vehicle. So that's a nice touch too. Not instead of just a decal, there's actually a drill out for it. And then over here you have your exhaust tips, your front fascia, and your rear spoiler. So the exhaust tips are actually exhaust tipty in the sense that they are drilled out a little bit. Not drilled out wholly the whole way through, but they certainly do have a nice bit of depth to them. So throw a little gunmetal or what your favorite exhaust tip choice is inside there to color the inside, and it'll look good. The front fascia here has the space where you're going to put your decal and or your metal transfer and your decal. You can sort of do either or. They recommend you do the metal transfer, then put the decal on over top of it. You do have to deal with the adhesive issues that sometimes occur within the metal transfers if you want to do it that way. And then you have the parking sensors tooled into the front edges of the front fascia. That's a nice touch as well. Obviously, we're dealing with a completely and totally top of the line Nissan Z. The next sprue we receive is a very large black one, and this has a good chunk of sort of your interior parts and some exterior trim as well. So obviously the big thing on here is your interior itself. I am not a huge fan of this being the bottom of the sprue. You notice everything else here is facing the wrong way except the interior. This is the bottom, ergo all of the ejector pins all over this. Now they did pretty much hide them for all intents and purposes underneath of the especially underneath the seats. I think they think you're going to flock this in the sense of actually legitimately putting down some sort of carpeting, because this whole area in here is carpeted. These two little sections here are carpeted, as well as obviously the floor boards. This ends up getting covered with the center console. This ends up getting covered by the bottom of the dashboard, so you don't have to worry about this at all. But yeah, if you're one of the people that just sort of kind of paints things and lets them go, this is going to have a lot of cleanup involved in it. If you're going to flock this, well, then you could just, whatever, the ejector pins. So I appreciate the fact that they're sort of hidden in the sense that, most people won't have to deal with them if they're going to flock the flooring. Remember, the only thing this would now be an issue with is I'm not sure you can flock a basic kit build under the IPMS national rules. You used to always be able to with, of course, out of the box in the past. I'd have to look at the rule set on that again, but that only applies to the nationals, so most people are not actually building for the IPMS Nats. So, it's not necessarily the world's worst issue, but be aware, if there's a downside, it's the fact that this is mounted in here upside down. I know it's all about plastic flow and everything else, but it's, for the most part, other than the fact that the seat backs have ejector pins, that's kind of expected. Most seat backs have ejector pin markings in them, so it's sort of a known cleanup area. Usually the ejector pins on an interior tub are on the bottom of it, and you don't ever worry about them, so just something to keep in mind. So let's flip over onto the sight side here, so to speak, and take a look at what you're getting here. So these individual pieces here are sort of the upper rear quarter of the door cards. They go aligned along the stair step here. So the door cards go into this lower area and those go into the upper area. So there are separate pieces. You have your center console. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit, too far away up there. You got your center console here, which is set up for pretty much set up for a manual transmission with your separate armrest spot and your handbrake spot. I'd have to look through the instructions again to figure out exactly what these are. I believe these are an interior piece. These are the scuttle panels for your windshield wipers, and then you have your mirrors, you have the footrest, or actually I believe this is actually your accelerator, your clutch, and your brake. You do have the option to cut the clutch off if you are going through and making this into a stick shift. And then you have your wipers forward and after, I should say, left-hand, right-hand drive. Over here you have your steering wheel, which has several separate pieces to it, so that you can color it correctly. The lower pieces down here with the buttons for your radio controls, your license plate blanks, and of course your steering column, which actually has quite a bit of flash on that, assuming that is supposed to be, I think that's actually not flash, it's keyed. So that's nice. You can't put it in upside down because you're going to have a slot in your dashboard that is shaped like that. That's kind of nice. Over here you have your seat backs, as we mentioned. You have your left and right hand drive sort of overviews, if you will, sort of the big chunks of the left hand, right hand drive. Over here you have the lower part of your left hand, right hand drive. This actually is the part that will hold your dash binnacle, as well as being the part where your infotainment center will go. This is your infotainment center. This is your sunshade, the upper part of the sunshade that sort of comes out over. This is your armrest and your little section of HVAC controls. And then you have the stick shift, your parking brake, your rearview mirror, your these are the three little pigs of the, if you will, three little binnacles for these center instrument things. If you take a look at the dashboard in depth here, there are gauge clusters, right hand drive and left hand drive, for little boost gauges and whatnot that run up here for your like oil pressure and stuff like that. They each have a little individual cover sunshade for them, so there is that as well. And then you have these little spears here, which are for the lower part of those side skirts that we showed you earlier. There's a little black trim to them, and that's a separate piece, which again, a nice touch, because of course anything that is a separate piece means that you don't have to mask it off and paint it. And real quick, because as I was putting it away, I realized what I was looking at. These pieces right here are actually the mirror faces for these mirrors. They are two pieces. If you look at them here, they don't really have a bottom to them. So those are the mirror faces, and then you use the metal transfers to put the chrome to them. Or you could BMF them or use Molotow or whatever your favorite chrome paint would be. But those are the bottom of the mirror faces. Okay, so the next thing we go here into is a smaller, about half sized compared to the other ones, aluminum colored sprue, or aluminium for our British friends. This is pretty much all drivetrain stuff and exhaust materials. So here is your transmission. This is all of the engine detail that you're going to get. I mean, in fairness, it is well engraved. It is nicely detailed. Throw a wash, paint that up into an actual metallic color and throw a wash on that, and that'll look real nice. although I'm not sure how much of it actually can be seen when you're done. And then you have your, let's see here, this is the rear part of your suspension component, because this is the front one, because it has your little holes for your spindles to make sure that your front wheels turn, as is typical of all Japanese kits pretty much. You have your brake rotors, which, I mean, have a nice little detail in the hub themselves, having a little bit of a indentation here in the, I believe this will be the front brakes. And yeah, otherwise they're kind of piss on a plate flat. There's no engraving to them whatsoever. I'm not sure if the real ones are really like that, or if they're cross-rolled, or at least vented a little bit. I'm guessing they had access to the real car, so they must really be like that. But it's one of those things that some PE might make those look a little bit better, although painting them up with some good metallics will make them look just as good as the metal would for all intents and purposes. You have your rear sort of uprights, your front uprights, because again, here we have the parts that your steering arm will snap onto to steer the vehicle. And then up here you have the inner pulls for your doors. So there quite literally are separate door handles for the inside. These are like titanium silver in the instructions, I believe. And then a couple of these pieces here, which I think are for, they're not the wheel cover spots, because those are on a different tree. We'll come back to those. They'll pop up in the instructions and we'll refer back to them. And then you have your prop shaft, or excuse me, not your prop shaft. This is the brace that goes across the back of the interior tree, right through the strut tower on the back. There's an aluminum brace that goes across here. If you built any of the Z's, pretty much, that Tamiya has ever done, or any modern Z, there's a strut tower brace there. So that's your strut tower brace. This is, your front and rear parts of your exhaust, and then you have the rear end of your rear end. And then you have sort of the inner parts of your upper part of your rear suspension, and then your muffler is there as well. Remember, you have exhaust tips for the outside edge of those. They are not, of course, painted, so you will have to paint those the color. And then I'm trying to think what these little skid pads are for. Again, some of the instructions will tell us in a second. Now, moving on to a similar size small black runner that I think is actually technically attached to this chrome runner. I think in real world, these two like connect, and then they're cut there, because that's just the way molds are made. Or we could look at this to see. I think maybe this might come off of this one. If we look here, that might actually be where it's cut at. That might actually be the whole runner. But at any rate, be that as it may, not important. This one has one of the neatest features about this car, and that is the fact that the roof is a separate piece. Roof on these cars, except if you get one in black, are black. There are, I believe, 2 different ways you can get this in a monotone color where there is not a black roof to the car, but 95% of these being built have a color-keyed black roof that accents your main color choice. So having this to be separate, of course, again, spares you from having to mask anything off. You have your inner rear section. This goes between the taillights to the back. You have your steering arm. You have your inner headlight pieces. So let me zoom in there. So you get to, these are, let's spin them as how you would see them here. These are your inner headlight bezels, and there are some pieces that go in here to accentuate this, and then you'll be doing a lot of detail painting as well. And then you have your outside of your mirror faces. So your mirrors are actually 4 pieces, or 3 pieces. So this is the outside edge of them. This is sort of the inside of the rear fascia. Your exhaust tips always come on here, and you got the little quasi diffuser back here. And then over here you have a whole bunch of suspension components. So you have, I believe these are the front struts, these are the rear struts, these are some more struts. I'm not sure which direction those necessarily go into. Here's your rear end component itself. And then you have bracing for, again, more of the rear of the suspension, your front sway arm, your rear sway arm, and then looking at these other pieces. I'm not technically sure what we're looking at here in these caps, but I'm sure that it'll become clear when we look through the instructions. That's something else, obviously, to look out for. And then we come to a teeny tiny little sprue. And this has your, obviously, your wheels and your grills. So this is the front grill on the Z has two components to it. This is the upper portion of the grill, and this is the lower portion of that grill, which has your little radar in it for your adaptive cruise control. These are the center of the wheels that go into like the little spot there, and then this also has the front lip spoiler the car comes with as well. That is a pretty thick piece all in all. It's not much thicker than the piece of the plastic it's on, but some good thickness. These wheels have some good detail to them. They'll look. These are depending on what color you paint the car. These are either black or a dark titanium. So if you do them in a dark titanium, you can throw a little wash into the lug nut area there and make those look nicer as well. And the last sprue for this kit, there are no chrome. No chrome for this one. You're going to do all your metallic painting your own way, is your glass piece. So you have your front glass, your rear glass, your side indicator lights, your headlight inserts, the headlight glass itself, the taillight inner glass, the taillight outer glass, and your side windows, and then your side repeaters are on here as well. Flip this over so that actually technically this is the way the sprue sits. This is the right way up, if you will, even though that makes the two front pieces upside down. But yeah, there's masks for pretty much all of this, as we'll see in a second. There's masks for the inside edges of the outer front and rear glass, so that you can paint the outside little black lip that most glass comes with. Inside outside masks for the windows. I think the fronts and rear and the sides also both have front and rear outsides. There's a pretty complicated painting system to this actual inner light that we'll go over in the instructions. It looks a little complicated. Maybe it's one of those things that once you're doing it and you have it sitting there, it'll make more sense. So the next bag you come across here are your wheels and tires. Wheels are all the same size, I believe. No, actually they are staggered just ever so slightly. The rear ones are just fractionally larger than the front ones. So there are two different sizes. They are, no brand specials, but they do have a nice tread pattern to them. They are the nice, skishy rubber that you would expect out of your Tamiya tires. And overall, nice set of tires. No seam in the middle, so a little light scuff up if you want to. Give them a little wear, or maybe they don't have any wear because it's a factory fresh car that's brand new. And you have of course, your polycaps in this bag as well. And so that pretty much wraps up the parts to the... It doesn't? Oh, yeah, you're right, guys. I heard the screaming all the way from here. You want to see the body. So inside the body bag is a tiny bag, legitimately tiny bag, that contains the rear fascia as well. So rear fascia has all the details you sort of expect there, in the sense of your normal plastic injection molding. Does have some mold lines along the outside edges, right there and right there. Kind of hard to see, I think, in the... Oh, you can see that one right there. And then you've got your parking sensors molded into the rear fascia as well. But overall, I mean, it's a piece that you would have to assume fits. I haven't seen anybody say, I can't get this to go on here, so we assume that fits. There are some pieces, attached to the body here that you're going to cut off, some dunnage for the front window, and then this little jobber here on the front, which, when it was molded, had a big tab attached to it. This is how you would, of course, pull it out of the mold. On the inside of the roof that is... Obviously, there's a roof on this. You have your area where your rearview mirror goes. You have some sun visors and a home link inside dome light area as well. Instructions on this will require you to paint the roof one color, and then sort of the inside of these C pillars another color, and inside the A pillars another color. So again, masking, paying attention, all that sort of stuff. Required here. Those little plates we were looking at before are the inserts that go into here for these little lower fender pieces. Okay, sure. But overall, body has a nice clean mold to it. That's what those little silver things are. These little parts that go, the little silver circles. We had two of them. We couldn't figure out what they are. They are the pieces that go into the C pillar for the Nissan Z trim. There'll be a decal that goes over top of them for that. Again, your filler piece is a different piece. I'm guessing maybe because of this curve It would have been difficult to mold that in and cut a seam line around it. It was easier to indent this and then make it a separate part possibly. And then of course you have your indents for your door handles, again making sure you pay attention to which handed your car is. Your roof obviously goes on the top of here, your spear goes over the top of here and fits into this sort of section along this line here. Overall, a very nice casting, very shiny there, so very highly polished. Mold lines are minimal, if existing at all. They're usually in the newer Tamiya kits. They become pretty good at adept at hiding the mold lines within the actual panel lines themselves, and that looks to be pretty much true here. We'll take an actual examination with some better light and a magnifier to see, but most likely the mold lines run through these trunk divots here and then come down either through the door pillar or through the hood depression here. These panel lines are a little shallow, I will say that. A quick scribe through probably required to get the best look that you're going to get out of that. But overall, it's a pretty nice shape. I know a lot of people don't like, whoops, as we throw it casually off the screen, a lot of people don't like the rear end that's on this car. They're not a big fan of how this whole rear end sits together, and I can see that to a certain extent. But overall, I like the car, the shape of it. I'm not that terribly concerned about it. It's not great, but it's not hideously to the point where I wouldn't want to build it, obviously. So that wraps up the parts here. We'll take a look at the accessories and the instructions. Okay, so your accessories, your paper accessories, if you want to call them that are included in this kit. Let's zoom down on in here. You have this little piece of metal stickers. They are the sort of transfers that are in a lot of Tamiya kits. These aren't decals, these are self-sticking appliques. Little Z logo, little Fairlady Z. Obviously you use the Z in America, Fairlady Z on JDM. Nissan logos and your mirror faces. And then you have your stickers. These are pre-cut, as you can probably see. They are die cut, so you don't have to cut these out. They're already cut for you. This is probably the inside edge of the front windshield, and this is the outside, being that your trim is going to be a little less thick on the outside edge. You have your rear window, your side windows. This is your tail lights, your headlights, and then there's inner and outer trim for the sort of 3/4 glass that goes between the B pillar and the C pillar. And then you have your actual decal sheet. If we can slide this all the way into camera view, that would be totally awesome. Which has, this little piece here for your windshield, which is sort of anybody who has a modern car knows is where your radar sight, if you will, your forward-looking camera for your adaptive cruise control and your collision avoidance system will sit. So this is, of course, right-hand drive and left-hand drive, depending on which one of the cars you're building. You have your badging. These are your wheel centers. These are for those little silver circles that go on the side of the car. You have some inner pieces of the headlights and the taillight buckets, some inner pieces of the interior. You have literal decals for the accelerator, the clutch and brake, and the footrests. You have, again, like the third brake light. You have trim pieces for the inner part of those rear tail lights. You have some speaker faces for the rear quarter of the door, the side, the actual doors. The dashboard has some as well. And then you have your gauge cluster for your main gauges, your infotainment, and then those little top of the dashboard things as well. One thing we'll see in the instructions, there are actually decals for the power windows and power door locks, and these are handed as well. Remember, your mirror controls, and then in this case, this is top of the line one, has mirror heat. Your door locks and your windows have, excuse me, are, obviously the control of the driver themselves. The passenger just gets their door lock and their window. So that's a neat little touch too. I'm not sure I've seen too many kits at all with actual decals for those fine details. I know a lot of people are probably like, I'd rather not deal with decals that small, because that's zoomed in, guys. Let's be honest. They're that tiny. That's 1:1. And here's, the paint spatula that completely covers that decal. So it's a teeny weeny little decal. Yeah, some people would probably rather not deal with that. Probably wouldn't paint it either, to be honest. Let's face it, it would just be something in the car that you wouldn't be able to see, and you're using it as totally up to you in that sense. But it's nice to have that included for folks that want to use that option. Okay, so lastly, we'll be looking at the instruction manual. Has all your normal stuff here. We'll take a quick second before we get into this to drill in on, oops, there's a little too much drilling. Let's zoom out a second. There we go. To your paint callouts. So if you want to know what you need in advance on your paint callouts, I'll go ahead and leave this sit here. You can pause it and jot down notes if you need to. And yeah, let's see. We can zoom ourselves back out to 1. That would be awesome. There we go. So going inside here, it tells you very quickly at the very beginning here, A is Japanese spec, B is US spec 1, C is US spec 2. And then what that comes down to is a black and red interior or a black and blue interior. Black and blue is only available in the United States. It is not a color combination in your interior that's available outside of the US. So no JDM, no Australian, no Chinese, no European spec. This is only a US thing. Obviously your model, you can do whatever you want to with it, but it is what I am doing because it is a special US spec thing. So here we go, starting off with the chassis. We mentioned this in the last video when we were talking about this kit coming in. A lot of masking going on here, or a lot of sectionally hand painting this depending on how you want to go. Obviously you've got your transmission being installed here and your rear springs being installed here. And then you have a chassis which they are calling for a Ghost Girl Gray, which is a little bit different than primer. You can probably get away with using primer. Nobody's going to really call you on it, but I have the right color because I'm that kind of person. Your titanium gold or titanium silver here for where the heat shielding is on the fuel tank sides, inner fender wells, and then you paint your upper A arms. And this section here is flat black. Upper A arms are gray, or are aluminum. This is black. These are black. This is gray, black, 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 black. Titanium silver. So a bunch of different colors there. And if you notice here on these springs, they're asking you to paint the bottom of the spring that same gray color as the chassis. I got to test fit these and see whether or not you can even see the bottom of that spring before I really worry about it, but keep that in mind. You come over here and you start building up your front suspension. So you're building your upper A-arms, your brakes, your calipers on here, LP7, that's pure red. So I think that is an option. That having these be not red is an option, but I think all three of these specs standardly, if you will, that's not a word, but you know what I mean, have red brake calipers, so that's not, so you know that is being called out there. Your upper or your lower A-arm suspension brace being aluminum and gloss black. You come through here. Personally, I would attach this to one side of this or the other. Actually, I'd probably attach it here to this before I put this on top of it, instead of trying to weed it through here. I've never understood why this is a separate part. I know you got to call out the instructions. It's aluminum with black ends, and you probably rubber black the CV joints there, but yeah, I'm not actually going to stick that through there. I would put it on up here so that it's already on there. And then you have that little brace going in here. Now we're building up the rear suspension, sway bar, that lower A-arm, or well, it'd be a lower A-arm assembly, rear end with the rear end pumpkin cover being a separate color. And then again, more rear end here. You're building up your brakes and your upper, or would technically really at that point be your lower sway arms. Installing it, putting in the front half of the exhaust. That piece that we couldn't figure out is the transmission brace. You're putting on this weirdly patterned lower brace and lower trailing arms and lower exhaust, or bottom of the edge of the exhaust, however you want to think about that. This again goes underneath of here. This goes, I'm again doubting the construction orientation here. I think I might put this on, then put this on over top of it, rather than trying to plumb it underneath. This is what test fitting is for. I would test fit this entire assembly instruction before I put it together to see what direction that is going to actually be easier in. Up here, you're putting your tips on your exhaust and mounting your muffler. You have the inner fender well strut towers going in here. You have the rear struts going in. You have your front struts going in. Now we're in the interior, and you'll see here how this is flat, and this is flat compared to the rest of this being semi-gloss. These are the carpeted areas in the car. So again, they probably figure you're going to go ahead and capitalize on that and, you know, put some flocking down rather than dealing with all those, what I'm trying to think of, instead of all of the ejector pin markings, and you have sort of your upper quarter parts of your door cars, if you will, going in. And then we get into actually building the interior, and this is where your ABC start coming in as far as how you're going to be painting things, right? So you're assembling your center console with your stick shift, your parking brake, and your really would probably be the center console. Probably pops up on this. There's probably storage in there, so that's a separate piece. And then you come into building out your dashboard. So A being your right-hand drive JDM spec, BC your 2 US specs, and so you see here the number of pieces that you're getting into here. So you've got the overall sunshade, you've got the sort of inner dashboard bezel, your infotainment center being installed, and then all of the sort of painting detail for that. Your 3 decals going into these little divots here with those, again, 3 separate sunshades going onto those. The lower part of the dashboard, which in this is one of the first things that you're going to be painting, that color keyed interior. This C is not 10:1 pure blue to flat base or flat clear all the way through, as we'll show you in a second. So this ratio changes to give different sheens, which is kind of fun, and this is pure red to flat clear. And then you have that lower AC controls, putting on your accelerator, your brake, clutch, and decaling up your dead pedal. Coming over here, you're throwing the dashboard in, you're putting in the side pieces for the sides of the center console, and again, these are color keyed, or with the ABC thing. Now you're building up your seats. So the back of your seats are semi-gloss black, which is probably why they're on the black tree, and then everything else on here, you're going to start paying attention to your coloring. So the base seat on the C is a one part clear to the 10 parts paint. The inner seat is 10 parts paint to 3 parts flat. So your inner seat is going to have a slightly different sheen to it than your outer sheet. And then your headrest on here is not black like it is on the A and B. It is, again, the other shade of blue with the one part. So different headrest and back will be one color, inner part's a different color. And this is basically just giving you your left-hand drive, your left seat, right seat. There is a little power seat button here that keeps the base of the seat straight as far as which side it goes onto. And then here you are, A being Japanese, B being American, with that, again, this lower seat portion having this little hump here on the driver's seat, so installing it onto the proper seat. Building up your steering column and your steering wheel parts. Decal for the center logo there. Coming over here, you're putting your instruments, your steering wheel into the instrument panel. Again, I think I probably put this in before I put this in, unless there's some sort of reason why you can't. I'm not sure why you wouldn't be able to, but that's sort of weird for it to be a separate piece. And then we come over here to painting your door parts. So you have, again, this door handle that goes into here. You have a situation where you're painting several parts of this interior several different colors, in the sense of having this trim piece and this trim piece, which are 10:1s on the blue, versus this inner piece that's already molded into the door being a 10:3. So again, you're looking at different basically sheen differences in the paint on the door cards. And then you have this inner part that goes into here as well that holds your actual power door lock buttons. This is where your decal differences come into, because on a left-hand drive car, you just have the passenger thing and the driver's thing on, and it's obviously reversed for the JDM. Come down here, you're throwing the door panels on, and then you're chucking the whole thing onto the actual chassis that you have going on here. Up here, we're painting, again, inside, outside of the window masks, building up your scuttle panels and your wipers, depending on which way you go. Here's the paint callouts for the inside of the body, showing you black, 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 and then I think that's a Middle Earth sort of gray for the headliner. Makes sense. Most cars, your headliner is a lighter color than the rest of your car. One part of painting the outside of the car that doesn't cover with the roof is painting sort of the top edge of the window trim, which with the bottom of the which would be the avoidance collision system and all that stuff in the rear view mirror bezel. And then here's your decals for, there we go. Decals for which, depending on which way you're building the car, as to which way that camera peeks out through the glass wrap. Over here, you're painting your windows and your rear window, and you're installing those little panels. We couldn't figure out what they're for. They're the actual trim panel that goes on the outside edge of these windows. So mystery solved there. Put in your windows, put on your roof. Your Shark antenna for your American cars, your JDM spec does not come with the Sirius XM satellite radio. And yeah, so this is black here, and then you put in your spears, which are these trim pieces up here, which again, it's just nice because this is a separate piece, these are separate pieces. Some people might have preferred these already be chromed or matte silvered so that they wouldn't have to paint them, but being separate and painting them certainly a lot easier than masking it off and painting them already attached to the body. Over here we're putting on our lower side skirts with the lower side skirt trims. There are decals for sort of the front and rear edges of these where there's sort of a try to think of what the best terminology would be for that, in the sense of sort of a rust prohibitor on the edge of these things that they've chosen to provide a decal for, so you don't have to paint on here. And then we have these little pieces that go into the front fenders. I'm assuming that in the end these lock into the top of the strut towers and actually help center the body and hold it to the chassis. Putting your rearview mirror in, moving along to the rear fascia, which has the lower trim piece painted up a different shade of from your body color and then installed. And this is sort of the complicated instructions that we have for these rear view mirrors. There's backs to them, which are those pieces, those silver pieces we couldn't figure out what they are. They're the backs to the actual rear tail lights. You have an inner tail light, which you paint black on the trim. And this is a clear piece, so you're going to be careful, right? So you paint the outside edge of it black, gloss black. And then LP52 on this is going to be clear red. So paint the top part, except for this little piece, these two little slopes down here, clear red. And then there are decals that go on the outside edge of that. And this has you painting up, depending on JDM or on US spec, the rear marker, the rear quarter marker lights. Then again, you have the masks. So you mask off the outside, the inside, and spray paint well, this is TS29, so you're not, well, that is spray paint. LP5 would be airbrushing, but you're putting a black trim on there. You're putting them over this part, in these inner taillights that you complicatedly painted in the last step, and then you have that little center piece that goes over top of it, has your first part of your system here for the stick-on things, or you could just use the decal, your choice. Front part here, same thing, this or the decal. And your front plate, should you choose to put it on here. And then you have your lip spoiler and your two different grills going in. Remember, your top grill is not the same color as your bottom grill. Top grill on this car is titanium. And actually, I think it's gunmetal. LP19, TS38. I'm trying to remember what the color that would be. LP19, TS38, gunmetal. Okay, so these top half is gunmetal, not titanium. I thought titanium might be a little too bright. But anyway, this is semi-gloss black. So these are two different colors. Make sure you paint them correctly. Front lenses going on with air masks. And then here's the very complicated instructions on how to paint the inside of the headlight bezels. They are different depending on whether or not you're building an American car or not. They have extra pieces for American cars. And then you put the whole thing together, which again, I'm saying, yeah, these do latch into this edge here. So that's part of what holds your body together. That makes sense. Putting your wheels on, or wheels together, I guess I should say. And then you're putting your wheels on. And then you're building your outside mirrors, which again are 3 different pieces with the appliques if you choose to use them. And then you're installing your trim pieces, your spoiler, your outside mirror faces, your door locks. Again, they're keyed depending on which version you're building. Putting them on the other side of the car. Fairlady Z if you're in Japan, just a regular Z if you're in the United States, and then they give you a couple of different painting and marking options. This is the yellow version, which is being built up as a JDM spec in this with the Fairlady Z logos, and then there isn't a second. I thought there were 2 painting call-outs for this, but I guess there isn't, so it makes me look like an idiot. But right at the back here gives you a little bit if you want to read about the different options you can do. As far as it looks like here, dark metal gray, burgundy, and midnight black being the ones that are monotone without a separate black roof, along with the other colors this car comes in. And yeah, that, guys, wraps up the review of the Nissan Z, the new toolkit from Tamiya. So this will be a kit we're going to be building in the first half of the year along with the LFA. And so look for those videos coming soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if the red mat works for you guys, and we'll see you guys on the other side.